Hello YouTube, I'm here at the one-of-a-kind, world-famous creation store. We have a special guest speaker, Dr. Charles Jackson, and I'm going to be following him around, listening to what he has to say. There's a cool event going on here. We're going to be learning about birds, about dinosaurs, about all kinds of cool stuff. So let's go on into the store. I'm going to give you guys a tour and check out what's going on. Daniel Johnson, what's up?
Hey!
Hey!
Come on in.
What can you tell us about this store?
I can tell you this store sells creation items like books and things that were created. Things that were specially designed and crafted intelligently. That's the only thing they'll sell here. So you should come check out the rare collection of said things.
Such as?
Such as this book. Help! I'm being taught evolution in my biology class. Which doesn't apply to me because I'm not in a biology class. But if I was, I might get this book and have to read it to my class. Now, help! I'm being taught evolution in my earth science class. Again, I don't have an earth science class. But there seems to be a theme with these books. But there's other books. And there's DVDs. We used to call them videos, but now they're DVDs. And so, all manner of stuff about creation, evolution, dinosaurs in the Bible, things that are good, and stuff. How's my hair?
And here are some cool fossils. Check these out. We've got an actual Stegosaurus plate. That goes on the back of the Stegosaurus. I think that there might be... Yep, here's a Stegosaurus over here. Well, a replica, a toy. So, that plate there. Now, these all belonged to a Tyrannosaurus. So we've got the tooth, the brain, the claw. So that there is its tooth. That here is its claw, and this is its brain. This is a brachiosaur toe bone. This thing's quite heavy. And the reason that the brachiosaur had a large toe bone is because he had big toes. I believe this is a 80-foot snake skin.
You sure you ready to hang out
Yes, we are.
The man who this belonged to must have been at least 14 feet tall. Wow. Here we have the famous Ica stones.
It's the opposite of the Big Bang. I was trying to be clever. How's it going? Pretty good. You thought you'd come play with us and things to go down.
What's so interesting about these stones is actually the circle patterns that are found on the dinosaurs in the pictures. We see dinosaurs typically have not been thought of as having circle patterns. In fact, when these were found, they were thought to be silly because of the circle patterns. And however, there was fossil dinosaur skin that was discovered with these actual circle patterns on them. So the question is, how did the people carving these stones know about these circle patterns prior to the discovery of the fossilized dinosaur skin? The only answer, of course, is they saw living dinosaurs. That's pretty cool.
fascinating to you, isn't it?
Yeah, I used to work there, and I've been doing it for a few years, but now I'm back in
That also makes me glad.
I wish I had manual focus. Sort of have to just play with it yourself.
I started at the top
There
of
it
the
is.
and walked all the way down to the bottom.
Now, what can you tell me about ants, Dr. Jackson?
They usually are in nature. They're usually found in close proximity to uncles.
Right, that is true.
Ants leave little trails of formic acid wherever they walk.
I didn't know that.
And they can detect that with their little teeny weeny antennas. That's why if one ant finds a hot dog you have left on the picnic table, he will leave a trail of formic acid going back to everybody else, and they will all follow it. That's why you see them running in little lines like that. Yes, ants are very industrious. I once heard a poem about that in my organic chemistry class, and it was something along like, ants seem very industrious, but you try being calm and placid if you were full of formic acid. Yes, and they are. They're full of formic acid. It's one of the things about them. And I think they have a lifespan of 45 to 60 days and 250,000 brain cells.
Wow, Dr. Jackson, you're so smart.
I learn by reading. So can you.
Now, I have known Dr. Jackson for about three or 4 years.
3 or 4 years?
I've only known...
in virtual reality.
And this is a pleasure to finally meet you in person.
Oh yes, my bro, my young bro. Did you have anything else in mind?
I don't know. This is sort of awkward.
Hey, here I got somebody. Oh no, you don't want to be in?
guess
Well,
not.
how about you? You want to be in this video? Well, come over here. This guy's going to be a scientist someday because he raised his hand when I asked how many people here think maybe they'll be. You did raise your hand. Maybe they'll be a scientist. How many of you think maybe someday when you grow up you might want to be a scientist? And you could be a girl too. Raise your hand if you think you might want to be a scientist. Well, so you were thinking of general biology maybe. Do you think you'd want to be a teacher?
I was more like a researcher.
A researcher. Well, that is cool. You know, you should watch videos by Dr. David Menton. He is an awesome. Have you ever seen him before on video?
I read his article.
He's an awesome anatomy professor who believes in the Bible. And I always have said, if there's one creation scientist I'd want in my shirt pocket during a debate with an evolutionist, it'd be Dr. David Menton, who is an anatomist like you. Okay, yeah, so we learn about God by studying nature. We study the plants, we study the clouds, we study the rain, we study the atoms and the molecules, and we study snails and stars and chemicals and all of that. Who made all of that? God. You know, if I really love Michelangelo, I'm not talking about a Ninja Turtle. I'm talking about the guy they named Michelangelo, the mutant teenage Ninja Turtle guy after. He was a great artist. Michelangelo carved statues and he painted pictures and he was awesome. He was awesome. If I wanted to learn about Michelangelo, because he's dead now, it's been hundreds of years, I would look at his paintings. I would look at his sculptures. I would see how he did everything he did. The master sculptor, the master painter. God is the master sculptor and master painter of the universe. So we study the universe, and the Bible says the heavens declare the glory of who? God. The heavens declare the glory of God. So that's what a real scientist does, is learns about God by studying everything he did, everything he wrote, everything he made. That's what science is really about.
Do you all know what I mean if I say the word evolution? Who knows what I mean if I say that word? Or who knows what that means? Yes? Yes, it's the idea that some scientists have. Let's have people looking this way, please. The idea that some scientists have who don't believe in God or don't think that God matters, where they think that animals have changed from one type to another. Where people think that animals have changed from one kind to another. But the Bible says that didn't happen. It says that God made animals according to their kind. Now, you're here to learn about birds, and I'm just going to tell you a little bit about birds, because sometimes you will see programs on television, and some of you might hear things in other places, where they often say that birds have come from dinosaurs. Have you ever heard that idea? That some people think that birds came from dinosaurs. Now, I think that's a very strange idea, and the Bible says that's not possible. Well, let's have a look at what they think. Okay? Some people think that that turned into that. Does that make sense to you? Doesn't make any sense to me. But there are some very clever people around who think that's the case. So I'm going to show you why it couldn't be. Certain dinosaur bones have been found with little marks on, but they're not feathers. Now, here's where we're going to get just very, very slightly technical. Right, can you breathe in? Breathe out. Right, what do you use to breathe in with? What were you doing then when you were breathing in? What was happening? Do you know what the thing's called inside you that you use for breathing in? Do you know? What do you use to breathe in with? Young lady at the back there. I'm sorry? Lungs. Excellent. Well done. I'm sorry. I'm going slightly deaf. That's why I'm wearing glasses. We use lungs. Now, we do know what dinosaur lungs look like. Dinosaur lungs, because we have actually seen some imprints of them on the bones, on the skeletons, and we know that their lungs looks pretty much like our lungs. And that's what they look like. If you magnify our lungs, that's what they look like. We breathe in, and we fill these little things up, and we breathe out. So the air goes in, and then out. Okay? Can you get that in your head? Can you try and remember that? Because that's what a dinosaur lungs were like. But a bird's lungs are different. Can you see that picture? In a bird's lungs, they breathe in and out at the same time. The air's going in and the air's going out at the same time. How could you change that one to that one? The answer is that you couldn't. If there really was something that was half dinosaur and half bird, it wouldn't be able to breathe. All its lungs would be blocked up while it was trying to swap over its lungs, and it would not be able to breathe. Do you think that would have survived? No, it would have died. And that really just proves that birds could not come from dinosaurs. It's called Archaeopteryx. Have you heard of that? And some people think Archaeopteryx was half dinosaur, half bird, but it wasn't. You might not be able to see this. It's got lots of feathers in the rock. You can see the imprints of feathers there. This was actually definitely a bird. And someone's done a drawing of it. It's not a photograph, because we don't seem to have these ones around at the moment, but it's definitely a perfectly fair photograph. This was a bird, not a dinosaur. So what we found is, we found that birds could not have come from dinosaurs. Dinosaurs couldn't change into birds. You can't imagine them jumping and flapping the wings. You can't imagine the lungs changing. You can't imagine the feathers changing. And one last thing, the Bible tells us what day of the creation week birds were made. Do you know? Which day were birds made? When did God make birds? Yes? The 5th day. Whereas dinosaurs were made on what day? Which day? The 6th day. So that's final proof that dinosaurs couldn't have changed into birds, because dinosaurs were made the day after birds. So remember those things, please, whenever you see television programs that tell you that birds came from dinosaurs. It's not true. What God says in His Bible is what's true. Thank you so much for listening patiently.
I'm going to use one of Mr. Paul's pictures here to add one more thing to it. Do you remember the name of this bird fossil?
Fred.
Fred?
No, that was the
Archie.
Tyrannosaurus. Yeah.
Archie, but what did it stand for?
Excellent.
Amazing.
Brilliant.
You and her need to get together. Archaeopteryx. Now, not only do we sometimes find fossils standing up, like how many have heard of the petrified forest? Yeah, we find petrified trees standing up too. Petrified bones of animals standing up. But also, lots of times, if we can find all the bones, and we can find them all put together, they're usually disarticulated, in other words, unhooked. They're usually unhooked from each other, but if we do find them close to each other like we did with Archaeopteryx, they almost always are like this. The animal is standing up and is doing this, trying to get a breath. How many of you have ever almost gone under the water at the pool by accident? Yeah. Don't you do this? You arch your back, you turn your neck up, and you try. This is exactly what this animal is doing. It died, well, gee, I don't know, like in a flood. And big dinosaurs do this too when they are in the fossils.
Because after all, if you follow what that young lady said, that the fossil is more likely to be formed because mud's come over it fast, then that explains why it would have been smashed up, doesn't it? It makes sense that if it was killed fast, there were lots of mud, that would explain why it's smashed up and why it's often difficult, and if you do have a complete one, why it's going to be hard to have that. I'll come back to you in a minute. Let's come to this gentleman next.
What about Tiktaalik rosea that they found? We're saying that they found a new fishapod or fishidian.
Which fossil did you mention? Sorry again.
I'm not sure if I'm
The
pronouncing it
Tiktaalik.
right.
The Tiktaalik. Dr. Jackson, do you want to answer? I'm not an expert on this.
Oh, you should see the photographs of the actual fossil. They found this in 2006 on Ellesmere Island off the coast of Greenland. They found several of them. They never found the hind end of the fossil. It was a fish, and it had these, if you have a picture, well, I don't know, in my PowerPoint I got pictures.
Yeah.
It has these fins like this on it. Well, because it had bones in the fins, like a zebrafish has these bones in their fins so they can kind of walk like on the bottom of the water. Out on the land, they break those little bones because they're too heavy on land. But the Tiktaalik had some bones in the fins, and so they said those evolved into our fingers. So the Tiktaalik is our great-great-grandma. The Tiktaalik rosei. Now, Tiktaalik is an Eskimo word, and it means, Tiktaalik rosei means big freshwater fish. The word means it's a fish. It's not a fishapod, a walking fish. Now, when you see in the museums the clay models of Tiktaalik, when they put all the meat on it and make it look like not just the bones, and when they draw it, it's got these long NBA basketball player legs. And it walks like this. The fossil looks like this. The fish looks like this. That was found in the year 2006, and it was found in a particular layer of rock. I think it was Devonian or Ordovician rock, and it was dated by evolutionists as 382 million years old, sometimes 382 million years old, just last year. And that's supposed to be the ancestor of all things that walk on the land, including people, because there was no land animals according to the evolution story during the Ordovician. So last year in Poland, in a rock quarry, we found fossil footprints, petrified footprints of a walking animal. It had 4 legs, and everybody in the whole world went, oh, this is interesting because it was in a layer of rock. And evolutionists think the deeper the rock is, the older it is. Well, yeah, it might be 20 minutes older, but not necessarily 20 million years older. But it was 10 million years deeper in their story. So that means 10 million, in their story now, 10 million years before Tiktaalik even existed in evolution, there was something that walked on the land. Impossible. All the main researchers, Jennifer Clack, Neil Shubin, and Ted Dasher, all of them admitted, all right, we thought we had it with Tiktaalik. We had the answer. We had the missing link. But it's not, because something else was walking around, and something else had to be the missing link to walking animals. It couldn't be Tiktaalik, and they said everything has to start over. So even though Tiktaalik was pretty fake-o, now it's even worse. We know animals were walking on a layer of mud under the Tiktaalik layer, and they have really panicked about it.
Can I make a quick non-scientific point? Particularly it might be helpful to parents if you're worried about your children seeing these sort of things and what are they going to make of them. It's interesting that news reports, like the discovery of the Tiktaalik, appear on the front page of newspapers and magazines. Then when they find out there's something wrong, the retraction appears well hidden, about page 12 down at the bottom, so that people miss it. That's very frequently the case. The other thing that you'll often find, so often the retractions are missed. There's a large amount of trumpet blowing when they find something. Then when they find they're wrong, you don't tend to hear much about it. The second thing is, if you read any of the science reports and you're stuck with big words, don't worry too much about it. You'll often find words like, we think that, it probably happened, scientists seem to think that, words like that, what I call fuzzy words. Does that mean they're sure about it? No, it means it's part of the story that they're making up. I suppose I was going to make a silly comment before that when I heard about Tiktaaliks, I was going to say, which ones do you like, the orange ones or the mint ones? But, the gentleman at the back wanted to ask something.
Yes. How many times have evolutionists had to change their story and retract?
Oh, at least twice a day. Probably as often as they change their underwear, really, I would think, because it's just they keep on coming up with problems, new things that don't fit in, and they are constantly changing their ideas, lots and lots of times. Science magazines like the New Scientist or Scientific American are constantly full of small stories where they say, this is helping us to rewrite our knowledge about the evolution of. Do you know what that means? That means they got it wrong before and they now change their mind.
Creature created by God into your home, you need to treat it as another member of the family. It's not a toy that you go to Toys R Us, and buy, and 3 weeks later you get tired of it and you throw it in the closet and never fool with it again. Now, we have too much of that going on. That's why we do what we do.
We have lots of time. So
yes, sir.
I recently read an article by I heard a National Geographic published an article that it found a velociraptor, and it had small bony lumps on his arms, and that proved that it had quills and feathers on its arms.
Okay, did you?
Yes, I've seen that. You have little lumps and bumps on your bones too, and they're not for feathers or for hair. What are they for? Well, if you look at a skeleton or a part skeleton, there are little bumps and lumps and little holes and things on your bones for where your muscles attach. They're like little nail holes. It's not really nail holes, more like grommet holes. The origin and the insertion of your muscles, they attach to your bones. That's why your bones move. Your muscles don't move, your bones move, but your muscles make the bones move. So the gigantic gun I've got here, that muscle attaches to my shoulder, that's called the origin, and attaches to my radius and ulna, my forearm, which is the insertion, it's called. And when the muscle shrinks, it makes the distance between here and here shorter, which makes this part go shorter, come this way. So it's like a rubber band when your muscle contracts. At the insertion and the origin, in both bones, there are little nubs and holes where the ligaments, now tendons attach, where the tendons. The tendons attach the muscle to the bone. Ligaments attach bones to each other. And so that's what those probably are. Birds do not have big pits in their bones where feathers come out of. What they're trying to do is trying to find anything that helps them convince people that birds came from dinosaurs. Velociraptors may have a lot of little nubs in their wrists, but they also have lots of little muscles in their wrists and their hands. And why would they have feathers on their hands? They should have them on their arms if their arms were turning into wings, because even evolutionists believe the hands of the lizards never did turn into wings. They stayed on the front of the wings and were claws like on the bird Archaeopteryx, which already Mr. Taylor has told you about today.
I'm going to ask this young lady for the next question. Just if you can put your hand down to the rest, because I'm coming to you next, okay? You know, when people see those bumps and want to believe that there are feathers there, It's because they desperately want to believe that there are feathers there. That's why they see them there. It's a bit as if you'd started thinking, oh, I must see, I don't know who your favourite musicians are or whatever. When I was young, maybe it was... I'm going to give my age away now, but it was probably the Beatles, okay? And so you wanted to believe that John, Paul, George and Ringo were going to walk down the street and see them. So every person who walked past you didn't know, you think, that must be Paul McCartney. You'd think that's what they were. In the same way, people see these bones, they think that they're feathers because they desperately want to believe they're feathers.
When
Yes?
the TV says that something is 150 million years old, how do they know that?
That's a good question. How do they know that something is 150 million years old? I'm sure Dr. J is going to give you some more specifics in a minute, but there's a couple of things that I could say. One is, they desperately want things to be 150 million years old, and it starts with that, really. A lot of people think that they get those dates from doing certain experiments called radiometric dating. Actually, if they've dug a fossil up, they will not have dated that by radiometric dating. Contrary to what most people think that they will have dated those fossils by some dating method. They won't actually. They basically look at where they think it is in layers of rocks, and they make some guesses because people decided that the rocks were millions of years old long before these radiometric dating methods were made. A lot of these ideas about how old these rocks were developed by a man called Charles Lyell. Charles Lyell was a great influence on another man called Charles Darwin, who you've probably heard of, who developed the theory of evolution and popularized it. And Charles Lyell wanted the rocks to be millions of years old because he didn't want scientists to believe the Bible. That was exactly what he said. He said that he wanted to free science from Moses. And by Moses he meant the books that Moses wrote, including Genesis. So he looked at how the various rock layers were arranged, and he said, well, such and such a creature must need so many million years to evolve, because he'd been talking to his friend Charles Darwin. Therefore, that amount of rock means that many millions of years, that amount of rock means that many millions of years. And it was basically his guess, because he wanted those ages to come out. And that's really where it comes from. Did you want to say anything more scientific?
Sure. I think there's some other good... You brought up some things that I want to actually re-emphasize. I like that. There's the story of evolution. It's a made-up story. In the made-up story of evolution, does evolution happen fast or slow? Slow. If it happens slow, would it take long or short to happen? Long. It would take long to happen. Really long. Because the more you're trying to pretend something happens that's slow, the longer time you need for it to happen. So that's why they wanted to pretend that the world was billions of years old instead of only thousands of years old, the way that all of the history books before that, 200 years ago, said, including the Bible. The Bible's a book about religion, about God, but it's also a history book because it has plenty of history facts in it, all over the place, about Jesus, about Moses and Abraham and everybody. So evolutionists wanted it to be old. How many of you have ever heard of this radiometric dating technique called carbon-14? Carbon-14. Carbon-14. Okay, a lot of you have heard of that. Carbon-14, okay, now hold that in your brain and put a bookmark there, and let me think about this with you. Which is bigger, 1,000,000 or 1,000? 1,000,000 is bigger than 1,000. That's right. 1,000,000 is bigger than 1,000. Now, according to evolution, it took millions and millions and millions of years for everything to evolve. But even if carbon-14 works like they think it does, which it doesn't, even if it did work, it would only be 100,000 years that it could make dates for things. And dinosaur fossils, if evolution is true, were 65 million years old, almost 1,000 times older. There is no evolutionist in the world that uses carbon-14. But carbon-14 is the most famousest. I made that one up. It's the famousest of all the radiometric techniques for dating fossils. And it was only last year They finally dated a dinosaur bone using uranium lead. They usually only date the rocks. And they found out it was 700,000 years off of what they always thought. And that's even though the uranium method doesn't work. All of these things that they use to say everything is really, really old, because they don't, all the history says it's not that old. All of these make 4 main assumptions. I'm not going to go over all of them. Carbon-14 makes 3 extra assumptions on top of that. So how many is that? 7.
Oh.
Yeah, more. Yeah. If a clock really runs fast, if I had a clock here and I turned the hands, every second another hour would go by. You see, so they're wrong about how fast these radioactive things decay. We do have scientific proof of that, but it's probably more than everyone wants to hear all about it.
So we're going to put it right there. Pretty much that means put a staple where it says staple. Kind of simple. Okay, now we're going to fold down our wings, which generate lift. All right, are you guys ready?
Yeah!
Ava.